HarperCollins presents Fly, Wild Swans, My Mother, Myself, and China by Jung Chang, read by Adjoa Andoh. To my mother, whose deathbed I am unable to visit. A few key dates. Manchu Dynasty, the Great Qing, 1644 to 1911. Republic of China, declared, 1912. The Kuomintang under Chiang Kai-shek rules China, 1928 to 1949. War against Japanese invasion, 1937 to 1945. Kuomintang Communist Civil War, 1945 to 1949. Communist China founded under Mao, 1949. The Great Famine, 1958 to 1961. The Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976. Mao dies, 1976. Deng Xiaoping's reforms start. 1978. Xi Jinping takes over, 2012. Xi becomes the supreme leader for life, 2018. Prologue. This book is about my mother and myself, and inevitably also about my grandmother and my father. Our stories are dramatic, partly because they have been taking place in China in the last 120 or so years, when the country has been turned upside down many times by tempestuous changes. But equally importantly, my parents and my grandmother were extraordinary people who swam against the tide and so ran into bigger waves. Born into such a family, I was thrown into an eventful life. Many years ago I told our stories in Wild Swans, Three Daughters of China. The book begins with my grandmother's birth in 1909 and her foot-binding as an infant, when China was under the last emperor, moved through Mao Zedong's rule, 1949 to 76, especially its last decade, the horrendous Cultural Revolution, during which my parents were subjected to painful ordeals, and finishes in 1978 when Deng Xiaoping officially ended the Mao era and started the reforms, and I, at that propitious juncture, became one of the first Chinese to leave communist China for the West. The year 1978 was a watershed moment. Since then, nearly another half a century has gone by, and China has risen from a decrepit and isolated state to a global power, challenger to the United States' #1 position. In those decades, although I have been living in London, my life has been entwined with my native land. My mother lives there, so I visited her almost every year until recently, when the political climate made this impossible. I travelled around the country to research my books, including Wild Swans, a biography of Mao, co-authored with my husband John Halliday, and that of Empress Dowager Cixi, 1835 to 1908, the last great imperial ruler who brought medieval China into the modern age. Most of those researches were conducted while my books were, and are, banned. My experiences dealing with the regime in those years were rich and revealing. China is now at another watershed moment. Chairman Xi Jinping worships Mao and seeks to build a Maoist state with capitalist features. This new Xi era is greatly affecting the lives of my mother and me. I felt the time had come to write a follow-up to Wild Swans, to pick up where I left off and bring the story of my family, along with that of China, up to date. My father and my grandmother died tragically in the Cultural Revolution, which I wrote about in Wild Swans. They have stayed in my mind, and so are often recalled in this book. In fact, the past has never been far away in my subsequent life. It has shaped me and moulded present-day China, and what's more, it promises to herald the future. I have called this book Fly, Wild Swans, as a tribute to my mother, whose deathbed I am unable to visit. She has given me wings, so I can take to the sky and be free. It is so much thanks to her that today I live freely and write freely.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?